everyone! It's out of reach. Today I am reviewing The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is a book that for some reason I've been wanting to read for years and just procrastinated and procrastinated. Even on BookTube I said that it was going to be the first book that I was going to read in March, and I didn't start it until the end of March, and it was the first book that I finished this month. I don't know why I put it off for so long, because it was awesome. I think it was probably the most charming book that I've ever read. I would say that it's a tie between The Hobbit and The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. That was a charming read too. But The Hobbit was so much more charming than I ever thought it would be, and it was just adorable mainly because of the main character. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly do a synopsis. The Hobbit is about this hobbit named Bilbo Baggins who lives a very quiet, simple little life that he loves. It's in a cute hobbit hole, and he has his daily routine. He has everything scheduled, like what he's gonna eat and his tea and his cigar and blowing the smoke rings, and it's all very enjoyable to him. He has no desire to get out and see the world or anything like that. But one day this wizard named Gandalf comes to town, and this wizard knew his family, and he visits Bilbo sort of unannounced. He just kind of barges in, and he basically coerces him into joining him and this group of dwarves on a very long journey to recover gold that rightfully belongs to the dwarves and was stolen from them from really their family generations past by a dragon named Smaug. So Bilbo sort of doesn't ever really agree to joining them on this trip, but he somehow finds himself on it. And that's what the story's about. It's about their journey to recover the gold from the dragon. It's a very simple story. It follows a chronological series of events. So they set off on their journey, and then they encounter their first set of obstacles, and they deal with those, and then comes the next set, and then they have to go through a forest, and basically stuff keeps happening until they get to the dragon. I actually enjoyed the simplicity of the story. It was so well told. J.R.R. Tolkien has this way with words. He has the ability to tell a very simple story and insert all these nuggets of wisdom without making you feel like he's beating you over the head with them. I mean, throughout the journey, Bilbo and the dwarves, especially in the beginning, they don't really see eye to eye at all. I learned that hobbits and dwarves are inherently very different at their core, and they didn't know each other when they started off the journey, so there's a lot of like clashing, and anytime one of them was kind of rude or they would think these things about each other, Tolkien would tell us what was happening and then insert some very wise statement about human nature and how we don't always say what we mean, how we let ego get the best of us and say things that are maybe ruder than what we wanted to say because of all these other circumstances. And I don't know, I immediately got the sense that the person writing this was just a very wise, learned person. And the other thing that I loved was Bilbo. He was such a great character. He develops a lot throughout the book. He starts off very insecure. He doesn't know why Gandalf singled him out. He doesn't know what he's gonna bring to this group that's so important. And slowly throughout the book, and it's done in a very organic way, he gains confidence and he really matures a lot as a character. And by the end, he takes a lot more initiative. So it was really nice to see him grow and develop that way and gain all that confidence. And to really earn the respect and admiration of the dwarves. They didn't really believe in him in the beginning of the story because he seemed so hesitant and really ill-equipped to deal with all the things that they were going to deal with, but he really earned their respect, and it was a slow but steady process. He was very brave, and again, the thing that I loved was that he never set out to be a hero, and so even throughout the book, while he's doing all these heroic things, he never acts like a hero. He stays very humble and kind and generous. His ego does not factor into the story at all at any time, and so I loved Bilbo the most, but I also loved all the other characters. I loved reading about the dwarves and their tendencies, and the goblins and the dragon and the wizard, and it was really fun for me. And also, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien is a pioneer of the fantasy genre, and it was really enjoyable for me to read about all the different creatures and to really be able to see how he influenced later writers of the fantasy genre. For instance, what he wrote about the goblins and their qualities and traits, I saw a lot of, I don't know, I felt like I could see how he influenced J.K. Rowling's work. It was fun to compare the two interpretations of goblins and how she took his work and sort of used it to mold her own. I don't know, I really love that. I love reading the work of somebody who I know inspired authors that I've already read, and to be able to read it and then suddenly make all these connections of influence. It's just really fun for me. Okay, I have to say that the only thing about this book, I don't really feel comfortable calling it a flaw, and I don't really have any interest in criticizing J.R.R. Tolkien for this, but it was the fact that there were no women. In a way, it felt kind of worse than what's standard in other popular fantasy fiction that came afterward, which is that there are women, but they have either the mom role or the girlfriend or just a less prominent role than the men. It was almost worse than that for me because there were no women, small roles or big roles. It was like he wrote a world in which no women exist. I would be enjoying the story and then it would kind of hit me that not a single woman had been mentioned, and I'd feel a little like creeped out. I think, as far as I recall, the only woman that was even mentioned was Bilbo's mother, and that was extremely briefly and only to sort of explain Bilbo's character traits and what he got from his mother's side versus his father's side. And as soon as that was explained, she was like never mentioned again. And she was, I think she had died before this adventure happened, so there was really nothing more to be said. Apart from that, I mean, they go on this long journey. They cover so much ground. They meet so many different creatures and people, and there's so much that happens, and it's just kind of crazy to me that in all of these adventures there wasn't a single woman, not even like somebody's mother being like, bye, enjoy your trip, like nothing. And again, I have no interest whatsoever in slamming Tolkien for this. This was written in 1937. He's been dead for a while now, so I feel like there's no point in criticizing him for it. But one thing I will say is that reading The Hobbit really made me want to read other fantasy books that feature women in prominent roles. So that's where the cry for help comes in. Fantasy is one of those genres that I just know the least about. I've read and or heard of like the most famous stuff, but in general I really don't know what's out there, and so I wanted to ask you for your recommendations. If you know of any fantasy books, have read any fantasy books that you've loved where there's strong women, or just women period, but I would really prefer if they have kind of stronger roles. I would really love to know what they are and what you thought about them. I'll tell you what I have read. I've of course read all the Harry Potter books. I've read the His Dark Materials trilogy, so that's the Golden Compass, the Subtle Knife, and the Amber Spyglass? Oh my god, I hope that's right, and I didn't just say a random title. I think that's right. It was a long time ago, but I really love that trilogy. And I read the first Game of Thrones book and part of the second one, so I know of that. Yeah. So I hope I made it clear that I really did love this book, and I'm planning on rereading it, and it was just so lovely to read, and all I have is love for The Hobbit, but it just made me want to read other fantasy books that are written just as amazingly, but just that feature women more. So yeah, I really look forward to hearing from you if you have any kind of recommendations for me. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!